when I was 20. I used to stay home alone a lot at my parents' place. We lived by a small pond and it was right in our backyard. Across the pond was a small town park and the neighbors were spaced out. The area was pretty fancy compared to the rest of the town, so the houses were big. I've moved out now, but back then I was still in college. My parents made a lot of money and we had multiple homes, so I often ended up home by myself. It was just a random summer night. I wasn't in school at the time, so I can't remember if it was the weekend or not, but it was probably a weekday since I was home. I was hanging out in the sunroom watching TV. That was my favorite spot in the summer because it was super cozy, and with the windows open, there was always a nice breeze. I was sitting in the corner of the couch right by the window when I heard some splashing coming from outside. It sounded like it was in the pond. It could have been a goose or a duck. They'd sometimes splash around and fight. At first I ignored it, but when it kept going, I turned the TV down and listened. I pressed my ear up to the window and could hear splashes, but they were way too heavy for a duck or goose. It really sounded like someone was swimming. I opened the sunroom door and stepped out onto the deck. I stared into the pitch-black darkness of the backyard, and that's when I heard someone humming along with the splashing. Someone was definitely in the water swimming. They were trespassing for sure. Each house on the pond had its own section of it. I went back inside for a second to turn on the deck lights, and as soon as I did, part of the pond lit up and the splashing and humming stopped. Whoever it was must have seen me. I wondered if it could have been one of the neighbors going for a swim. But that didn't make sense because no one ever swam in the pond. Whether it was a neighbor or not, I wasn't about to go out there and confront them. So, I turned off the lights, locked the door, and stayed inside. I texted my brother who was away at college to tell him about it, but he didn't reply right away. I was trying not to freak myself out, but it was hard to focus on the TV after that. Every time I looked out the window, all I saw was complete darkness. I had the TV on in the background, but I didn't realize how much light it was giving off outside. Then, I thought I heard something on the deck. I scrambled to find the remote and turned off the TV. As the room went dark and quiet, I realized I could hear heavy breathing right outside one of the windows. I immediately laid flat on the couch, trying to stay hidden. After a few seconds of silence, a deep voice from outside said, "I see you." My heart sank. I didn't know if I should stay quiet or say something, so I just blurted out, "Paul, is that you?" Paul was one of our neighbors, and I was hoping maybe it was just him messing around, but the person outside didn't answer. Instead, I heard footsteps walking away. They sounded like someone walking barefoot. The sound eventually faded, but I stayed lying on the couch, too scared to move. After a few minutes, I got up and decided to check all the doors to make sure they were locked. I jumped off the couch and ran straight to the front door. It was locked, and so was the side door. After texting my family about what was happening, my dad told me to turn on the backyard lights and check if anyone was still there. He told me I needed to man up and protect the house, so I listened and peeked out through the window. The deck was clear. I grabbed a big knife and stepped outside to check. When I looked down, I saw wet footprints that were already starting to dry, but I could tell they were from bare feet. I followed the footprints around the side of the deck, and what I saw freaked me out. Someone's head, just their eyes and forehead, was peeking over the edge of the deck, watching me. As soon as we made eye contact, they turned away. I was ready to call 911 at that point. I did it before even telling my parents. I locked myself inside while I waited for the cops to arrive. When they got there, I felt a lot better. They asked if our family had any enemies or people who didn't like us, or if we had problems with any of the neighbors. They did a quick check around the property, but didn't find anything. I decided to close all the windows that night and turn on the air conditioning just to feel safer. When I woke up the next morning, I was relieved to see the sun. That guy never came back, and we still don't know who he was.